There are places where silence feels heavier than sound. A forgotten cemetery lies at the edge of Ouagadougou, where the sun bleeds into the dust and even the wind seems tired of carrying grief. The earth here is cracked like old skin, and the air smells of loss and unspoken prayers. Among them sits a small boy, no older than 8. His clothes are torn, his feet bare, and his tiny fingers trace the letters on a rough wooden cross. His eyes, red, swollen, hollow, stare at a mound of fresh earth. His mother's grave. He hasn't moved for days. He hasn't eaten, he hasn't spoken, only watched, because in his mind she's still here. And if he leaves, she'll be truly gone. They called him Amadou, a child of the streets, invisible to the world. But on this day, someone would see him. Someone the world had never imagined would stop for a child like him. Inside the lead vehicle, President Ibrahim Traoré sits quietly, watching the horizon. The man the people call the soldier of the people, the guardian of Burkina Faso. He's returning from a military base inspection, his mind filled with reports, maps, and decisions that could alter a nation. But fate, that strange whisper of destiny, had prepared something else for him that afternoon. Through the tinted window, a flicker catches his eye, a movement inside the old cemetery. A small figure motionless against the sun. He leans forward. Something about that stillness strikes him harder than a bullet. "Stop the convoy," he says quietly. The guards exchange glances. Protocol forbids unplanned stops. But when Ibrahim Traoré gives an order, no one questions the reason. The vehicles screech to a halt. Dust clouds rise. The president steps out, the heat hitting him like a wall. "Sir, please." "It's not safe here," one of the guards murmurs. Traoré doesn't answer. He's already walking toward the iron gates, slowly, deliberately, his boots crunching over gravel. Inside, he sees the boy, a tiny body sitting upright like a soldier, unmoving, unbroken, guarding his mother's grave. The president stops a few steps away. He feels something he hasn't felt in years, an ache deep in his chest. He kneels down beside the boy. "Young man," he says softly, "why are you here alone?" The boy doesn't look up. His voice trembles like wind over water. "I'm watching over my mother. Someone has to watch over her." Traoré's throat tightens. 3 simple words, yet they cut deeper than any speech he's ever given. "How long have you been here?" 3 days, the boy whispers. "Since they put her in the ground. He's been here 3 days, without food, without water. Only love and grief keeping him alive." Traoré looks around. His guards stand frozen, unable to speak. These are men who've seen war, but none had seen heartbreak like this. "What's your name, son?" "Amadou." The president gently places a hand on his shoulder. The boy flinches at first, then, slowly, leans into the touch as if he'd been waiting his entire life for someone to care. "Amadou," Traoré says softly, "your mother must have loved you very much." Tears spill down the boy's face, cutting clean lines through the dust. "She sold vegetables at the market," Amadou says. "She woke me up before sunrise. Told me stories while she packed the cart. She said one day I'd go to school, that I'd make her proud." In that moment, Ibrahim Traoré wasn't the president. He wasn't the soldier or the leader. He was just a man, standing before a child who had lost everything. But what he does next would change more than just one boy's life. It would remind an entire nation what real leadership truly means. Amadou's voice is barely a whisper now. "She said I would become something important." He stares down at his hands, small, trembling, stained with dust. "But then, she got sick. The fever came fast. The hospital wanted money. I tried to sell her cart, but it wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough." In that moment, something inside him broke. Rage and sorrow collided in his chest. Not just for this child, but for every mother buried too soon, for every child left alone in the dust of forgotten promises. He thought, how many Amadous are there in Burkina Faso? How many children watch their world collapse while the world watches in silence? Traore kneels lower, his voice firm but gentle. Amadou, your mother would not want you to stay here. She would want you to live, to become that something important she dreamed of. Amadou shakes his head, refusing. I have nowhere to go. The neighbor threw me out. Mama owed rent. I have no one. Behind him, his chief of security shifts uneasily. The schedule is tight. Briefings, calls, international meetings. But Ibrahim doesn't move. He looks down at the boy, and in that moment he knows none of those things matter. You have someone now, he says quietly. Amadou looks up, confused. Hope flickers in his tear-filled eyes. Then, the whispers begin. People from the nearby neighborhood have gathered, curious, skeptical, whispering among themselves. Is that the president? What's he doing here? Probably for a photo, they all do it for show. But there are no cameras, no press vans, no stage. Only a man and a child, a president and a boy bound by loss. Mr. President, we need to leave. You have a conference call with our international partners in 45 minutes. Traore doesn't turn. His eyes remain fixed on Amadou. Cancel it, he says simply. The advisor blinks, unsure if he heard correctly. Sir, with respect, this is a critical meeting. Security funding? I said cancel it. His voice carries quiet authority, no anger, only conviction. Everything else can wait. This is irregular, one murmurs. We can't secure this area properly. And if he takes the boy, with him there are protocols, background checks, legal steps. The other guard smiles faintly. Since when has Ibrahim Traoré ever cared more about protocol than people? An elderly woman pushes through the gate. Her voice cracks as she speaks. That boy's been here for days. We tried to feed him, but he wouldn't leave. His mother had no family. She came from the north, running from something. A man in a faded suit shakes his head bitterly. You'll see. He'll make a show of kindness. The cameras will come. The story will spread. And by tomorrow, that boy will be back here, alone again. That's how it always works. But Ibrahim hears it. Every word, every drop of doubt. And deep inside, he understands. He too had once been part of that crowd, watching corrupt leaders make empty gestures while children starved. He remembers his own childhood, the hunger, the humiliation, the endless promises of a better tomorrow that never came. He remembers the day he swore to himself, if I ever had the power to change things, I would. Now that promise stands before him, small, broken, and barefoot. He looks at Amadou again. Not just seeing a boy, but seeing every child who had been abandoned by the system. Every voice that was never heard. Amadou, he says, kneeling again. You don't have to be alone anymore. The boy looks at him, silent, uncertain. From today, Ibrahim continues softly, you walk with me. A ripple passes through the crowd, gasps, whispers, disbelief. He's taking the boy? Is this real? He can't mean that. But the president's face leaves no room for doubt. He turns to his team. Prepare a seat in the car. We're taking him home. Sir, that's against what? Ibrahim cuts him off, his voice steady but burning. Against protocol? Against compassion? Against doing what's right? The guard falls silent. But my mother, he whispers. Ibrahim glances at the grave, then kneels beside it. He picks up one of the wilted flowers and presses it into Amadou's palm. She's not alone anymore, he says, because you'll carry her in your heart, and I'll help you carry the rest. Tears well up in Amadou's eyes, but this time, they're mixed with something else, the faint spark of belonging. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The leader of a nation knelt before a forgotten child, and the crowd watching realized this was no act, no staged photo. This was leadership reborn. The convoy, once a symbol of power, now moves, slowly through the dusty streets, carrying not just the president, but a child who had once been invisible. Behind them, the crowd watches in silence, many with tears in their eyes. The cynical man in the suit whispers almost to himself, maybe this time is different. He doesn't speak. But when Ibrahim glances at him, the boy manages a faint smile. And in that fragile smile, a nation's hope begins to stir. True power isn't measured by how many people serve you, but by how many lives you choose to serve. Wind stirs the dust. The air feels sacred, as if the earth itself is listening. Ibrahim Traoré crouches again, meeting Amadou's eyes. His voice is calm, steady, the kind that could quiet a storm. "I want to tell you something," he says. "Your mother gave everything she had, every breath, every tear, every heartbeat, to protect you, to love you, to raise you into someone strong." The boy's chin quivers, his voice breaking like dry glass. "She's gone now. How do you know what she wanted?" Traoré exhales softly. His eyes glisten. "Because every mother wants the same thing, Amadou. They want their children to have a better life than they did. They want their children to live the dreams they could only imagine, to be safe, to be happy." People stand on stones and ledges, some recording on shaky phones, others clutching their hearts in silence. "I can't just leave her," Amadou whispers. "If I leave, it means I'm abandoning her." Traoré shakes his head slowly. "No, son. Leaving doesn't mean abandoning. Leaving means you're choosing to live. And when you live, truly live, you carry her with you. You honor her with every step you take toward the future she wanted for you." The boy looks down at the grave, his small shoulders trembling. The last wall of resistance is breaking, but fear still anchors him to the ground. Where would I even go? The president extends his hand. A single gesture, but it feels like a promise written in history. The guards freeze. The advisors exchange panicked looks. The crowd stops breathing. This is it, the moment when words must either turn into truth or die as another speech. Traoré looks at the boy, his eyes fierce with compassion. "Come with me." And then, before anyone can speak, before a single advisor can object, Ibrahim Traoré bends down and lifts the boy into his arms. The crowd gasps, phones lower, the wind stops. For a moment it feels like the entire city has gone silent. The boy is too light. Bones beneath thin skin, a body that tells a story of hunger and sacrifice. Narrator, low, resonant. In a world that often measures power by how far a leader stands above his people, this one showed his strength by kneeling to lift a child. Every step is slow, deliberate. The heavy boots of a soldier, the tender arms of a father. "You're coming with me," Ibrahim says quietly. "No child will sleep on a grave while I still have breath in my body." Amadou's thin arms wrap around his neck. His face buries into the president's shoulder. And then, for the first time in days, the boy cries. Not silent tears, but full sobs that shake his entire frame. The crowd begins to weep with him. Soldiers look away, blinking hard. Even hardened guards feel their throats tighten. But just before they reach the gate, Amadou stiffens. "Wait!" Ibrahim stops immediately and lowers him gently to the ground. The boy runs back toward the grave, barefoot, stumbling, and kneels beside it. He presses both hands into the earth. The crowd falls completely silent again. All they can hear is the wind whispering through the grass and the faint sound of the boy's sobs. He whispers something, too quiet to hear, but his lips tremble with every word. "I love you, Mama," he finally whispers aloud. "I'll make you proud." He closes his eyes, pressing his forehead to the dirt. Ibrahim stands behind him, head bowed, as if praying with him, and in that moment, time stopped. The leader of a nation and an orphaned child, bound by love, by grief, by hope. The crowd saw not a president, not a soldier, but a man who remembered what it meant to be human. Amadou stands, wiping his face with the back of his hand. Ibrahim offers his hand again. This time, the boy takes it without hesitation. The crowd parts in silence. No one dares speak. An old woman crosses herself and murmurs, "May God bless this man." A soldier mutters under his breath, "This is the Burkina Faso we fought for." As Ibrahim helps Amadou into the car, the boy looks out the window one last time. The grave grows smaller, fading behind the rising dust. He clutches the wilted flower still in his hand. For the first time, Amadou's lips curl into a faint, fragile smile. And in that small, trembling smile, Ibrahim sees a reflection of his nation, broken but unyielding. People wave as the cars disappear down the road, not out of ceremony but out of something deeper, respect. They say a revolution begins when one man dares to stand up, but sometimes it begins when one man kneels down. In the heart of Burkina Faso, a leader carried a boy and with him carried the hope of an entire people. Leadership is not about power, it is about presence, and sometimes it begins with the courage to stop for one crying child. No child sleeps on a grave, not while I live. The last of the sunlight glows on Amadou's tear-streaked face. He kneels one final time beside the grave, his small hands pressed against the earth that now feels warm beneath his palms. He whispers, barely audible, "I'll make you proud, I promise." The words hang in the air, fragile, trembling, but full of strength. Then Amadou rises. He wipes his eyes with the back of his hand and turns toward Ibrahim Traoré. For the first time, his steps don't drag. They carry purpose. A boy broken by loss now walks like someone who has decided to live again. Ibrahim extends his hand. The boy takes it, and together they walk toward the presidential convoy. The security detail moves in sync, scrambling to accommodate this unexpected passenger. One guard, a father of 3, removes his own jacket and wraps it around Amadou's frail shoulders. Another opens a water bottle, pressing it gently into his hand. Their eyes betray emotion. The kind soldiers are trained to hide. As Ibrahim opens the vehicle door, he pauses. He turns to face the crowd, his voice cutting through the silence like thunder wrapped in calm. "I want all of you to witness this." Every phone lifts again. Every whisper dies. "This boy's name is Amadou," he says, his voice firm. "His mother died because she couldn't afford medicine. He stayed by her grave for days, thinking it was the only home he had left." A hush ripples through the crowd. "This," Ibrahim continues, his tone rising, "is not just about one boy. This is what is wrong with our nation. The disease we suffer from isn't just poverty or corruption. Those are symptoms. The true disease is blindness. We have forgotten how to see one another." His words echo across the courtyard. Even the wind stills. We walk past suffering every day and tell ourselves, "It's not my problem." We see a hungry child and say, "Someone else will help." But there is no someone else. There is only us. Amadou looks up at him, his tiny hand gripping Ibrahim's tightly. "If I, as your president, cannot stop to help one child, then what right do I have to ask you to build a better Burkina Faso?" A woman pushes forward, tears on her cheeks. "Mr. President," she calls out, "what will happen to him?" Ibrahim glances down at the boy, then back to the people. "That's for Amadou to decide, but I can promise you this. He will never sleep on a grave again. He will eat. He will go to school, and when he's ready, he will help me build a country where no child has to choose between food and medicine." A man steps forward, his voice trembling. "We wanted to help, Mr. President, but we have nothing ourselves. We're just trying to survive." Ibrahim nods slowly, understanding in his eyes. "I know. That's on me, on the government, on those who've held power and forgotten what it means to serve. But change doesn't start with money. It starts with moments like this. One child, one act of compassion, one decision to care." He picks Amadou up again, holding him close. "When you go home tonight," Ibrahim says, turning to the crowd, "remember what you saw. Remember that your president stopped his convoy for an orphaned boy. And ask yourselves, what would Burkina Faso look like if every one of us did the same? If each time we saw someone in pain, we didn't walk past, but stopped and asked, 'How can I help?' The silence that follows is thick with something new, conviction. Through the tinted window, Amadou stares out at the crowd, at the cemetery, at the only life he's ever known fading into the distance. Ibrahim sits beside him, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Are you afraid?" he asks softly. Amadou thinks for a long moment, then shakes his head. "No, my mama used to say that God puts people in our path when we need them most." He looks up. "I think she sent you." Ibrahim's throat tightens. The soldier, the revolutionary, the president, all titles fade in that moment. He is simply a man who has been reminded of what leadership truly means. Within hours, the moment goes viral. The footage, shaky, grainy, emotional, floods the internet. Dozens of phone angles capture the same unforgettable image. The president of Burkina Faso carrying an orphan in his arms. By morning, it has millions of views. By nightfall, it circles the entire continent. Commentators call it the day compassion went viral. But to Ibrahim, it's not about views. It's about a boy who finally got to sleep in a bed. Amadou wakes. The next morning at the presidential residence, clean sheets, warm food, a doctor gently checking his heartbeat. His small hand clutches the same flower he took from his mother's grave. He whispers to himself, "I'm safe now, Mama." The next day, Ibrahim Traoré visits the cemetery again. Alone. He kneels beside the fresh headstone, newly engraved. A loving mother who gave everything. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten. He places a bouquet of white flowers there, the kind that never wilt quickly under the sun. That evening on national television, he makes a declaration. From this day forward, he announces, no orphan in Burkina Faso will be invisible again. He introduces the Amadou Project, a national initiative to identify every orphaned and abandoned child in the country, providing them with food, shelter, education, and health care. If you can give only the price of 1 cup of tea a month, he tells the people, give it. Because when millions of us give a little, we build miracles together. The nation erupts in response. Thousands volunteer. Citizens flood community centers with small donations, food, books, and clothes. In weeks, hundreds of children are registered. In months, thousands. And for the first time in decades, people begin to believe again. Not in politics, but in each other. A baker in Bobo Dioulasso starts giving free bread to street kids each morning. A doctor in Ouahigouya opens his clinic 1 day a week for families who can't pay. A teacher stays after class to tutor orphans who've fallen behind. A mechanic fixes bicycles for children walking miles to school. Each small act becomes a thread in a vast new fabric of compassion. The spirit of the Amadou Project is no longer a government program, it's a movement international, and news outlets pick up the story. Headlines read, "A president who carried a child as and lifted a nation." Burkina Faso's revolution of the heart. Months pass. Amadou grows stronger, healthier, and more confident. He learns to read and write. He plays football with other children in the palace courtyard. He begins to laugh again. That sound alone enough to melt the hardest of hearts. Ibrahim visits him often, not as a president, but as a father figure. They study together, draw maps of Africa, and talk about leadership. Do you miss her? Ibrahim asks one evening as they sit watching the sunset. Every day, Amadou replies. But when I help someone else, it feels like she's close again. Ibrahim smiles, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Then never stop helping others, my son. That's how you keep her alive. 1 year later, a grand hall filled with thousands. Ministers, teachers, orphans, farmers, all gathered for the first anniversary of the Amadou Project. Amadou sits in the front row, wearing a crisp school uniform, his eyes shining. President Ibrahim Traoré walks onto the stage. The applause is thunderous, but he lifts his hand for silence. "A year ago," he begins, "I met a boy who taught me more about leadership than any book or general ever could. He showed me that true leadership is not the big decisions made in offices. It's the small ones made in moments of compassion." He scans the faces before him. "When I found Amadou, he thought his life ended beside his mother's grave. But I saw something else. Courage, loyalty, and a heart that still believed in love even when everything else was lost. I thought, if this boy has that much strength, what could he become if we just gave him a chance?" Ibrahim steps back and nods toward Amadou. The boy rises, walks slowly to the podium. The crowd holds its breath. "My name is Amadou," he says clearly, "and I'm here because one man stopped for me." He pauses, looking out at thousands of faces. "President Ibrahim changed my life. But he also taught me something important, that I can change someone else's. And so can you. Every one of you can be the person who stops, who notices, who cares." A wave of emotion sweeps through the hall. People stand. They clap, they cry. It's not just applause. It's an awakening. A young girl receives her first school uniform. A doctor hugs an orphan patient. Volunteers paint a new classroom wall with the words, "The Amadou Project." Ibrahim and Amadou lay flowers at the mother's grave together, now surrounded by bright marigolds and a plaque that reads, "Love never dies. They say revolutions are written in blood." But sometimes, the greatest revolutions are written in tears, in kindness, in the quiet courage to stop for one crying child. "Do you think Mama can see us?" Amadou asks softly. "I think she never stopped watching," Ibrahim replies. The boy smiles, eyes glistening. "Then she knows we kept our promise." The wind blows gently through the trees, peaceful, full of life. The narrator's voice fades in, not because a president helped one child, but because one child reminded a president and a nation of what truly matters. You can be the one who stops. You can be the one who notices. You can be the one who cares. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, live it. Be it one act of compassion can change the world. The story of Ibrahim Traoré and Amadou.